What's happening, guys? It's James Patrick here with the Black Queer Culture Show's Queer Space, a space where people of all shapes and sizes and colors and flavors can come and have a conversation about all things queer. And today we're going to be talking about all things queer in politics with the amazing Dylan Gunnels. Dylan, how are you?
I am so good. How
Dylan,
are
I'm so excited.
you? That makes me nervous.
I have
I do not
not.
want to disappoint.
It's been a while since I fantasized about a conversation, Dylan. I want you to know. I've been fantasizing about this moment.
I'm ready.
Well, so let's just jump in.
Okay.
The climate of today's political arena is something to behold. I have to say that I have less rights than my mother. My mother's going to be 80 this year. Okay, my mom came out when sliced bread was just getting popping, and I have to say I have less rights is absolutely astounding.
Uh-huh.
Could you? I want you to, and I told you this before too. I want you to break it down to me as if I have no idea what's going on, because there's so many people listening that are watching this that really don't know what's going on. So maybe you can shed some light.
Yeah. I think the good news is I didn't have a clue. You know, I think I look at folks who are in this space who have done this a lot longer than me or in different ways than me. I'm a pastor. I'm a nonprofit executive. I'm a coach and facilitator. I'm a social entrepreneur. Like, so many of my titles and the things that I do on a day-to-day basis are actually more community organizing than political. And so I look at people who like went to school and got their degree in political science, and they worked campaigns and they got involved in this way and they started working in an organization, and all those things are great. I'm not downplaying that, but I think from my perspective, you can fall into this space. And I think that's what happened for me, is that I've always been intrigued by the process. I've always loved the game of politics. I love campaigning. I love the process of getting people elected. I love everything that goes into that. And I love the game of government. And I don't mean that in a way that downplays or lessens the reality that we're facing right now. But there is a game to the way in which we go about that too. And so I love all of that. But I think what happened for me was I grew up in Aiken, which is a more conservative area. I grew up in a very conservative home.
It's dry down there.
I grew up in a bubble, and I got out of the bubble. And I didn't get out of the bubble until I was out of college and out of Charleston, and that's a whole nother story. And all of a sudden, I came to terms with who I was, my own sexuality. I came to terms with my identity, and all the scales fell off. And it was like, wait a minute, this system doesn't work for me. And now I'm starting to understand queerness and gender expansiveness and color and race and all these different things, and how if the world's not ordered right for me, it's really not ordered right for people around me. And so that's a long-winded way of saying, like, talking about the arena and politics and the process and advocacy, people get so overwhelmed and they feel like they don't fit into that space, so they don't know what to do. And my argument is just start. Like, just find the thing that you're passionate about, the thing that irks you, or the thing that's directly affecting you. And how do I get plugged in with the people, and particularly the community leaders who are doing something about it? So that doesn't fully answer your question, but I think to say, like, so many people don't know what's going on because there's too much going on.
Yeah.
There's too much flying at us too quickly. And that's the game, that they're doing that on purpose.
Yeah.
And so I think it's harder to say what's going on and easier to say, what is it that keeps you up at night? What is it that's most affecting you? Let's start there. Let's figure out who the community leader are, who the organizations are. Let's start there. And that's your entry into the process.
I wonder how we can have conversations about moving forward when we're not discussing diversity, equity, inclusion in our own community. I've seen, and I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that's kind of noticed this trend specifically on social media, but there has been such a divide between gay people and trans people that it is, I've seen it blow up so massively I don't know how I'm going everywhere with this, but I don't know how we're going to get to there when we can't get past here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just in that regard, but it's in the regard for so many people who are in the same we're in the same space dealing with the same thing, and yet we're some of us don't even feel
Mm.
phased by it. Like, it's not enough to say we're all queer because we're still not all equal.
Mm-hmm.
How do we, and you don't know, but how how do we even get there? How
Uh-huh.
do we get past there?
Have hope in our history. Okay, number one, we don't know our history, and I'm talking to our community. I'm talking to queer and trans folks. We don't know our own history, and it's not our fault. It is the fault of the system that we came up in. It is the fault of an education system that fails us. It's a fault of things like not knowing names like Bayard Rustin
Yeah.
and Harvey Milk and Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson and all these names that you can rattle off now when you know your history. And so we have a dark history in this movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stonewall happens in 1969. The first march happens in 1970. It's 1973 when Sylvia Rivera grabs the mic on that stage and says, I have fought for liberation. I've lost my job. I've lost my house. I've done the movement did not include trans people even then. It didn't include people of color then. It was a white male movement. And so on the one end, that may sound twisted, but find hope in the history because we haven't come all the way, but we've come much further than Sylvia Rivera having to demand her own place at the table
Mm-hmm.
in a movement that was supposedly about all of us. So I find hope in that. But I also would argue it is that. It's not knowing our history and it's not understanding the nuances of our own community. And let's just call a spade a spade. We live in the South. We live in South Carolina. We've been segregated by the system, and that permeates into even minority groups like ourselves. And so when you grow up in a place like this that doesn't afford you the opportunity to even be fully authentically who you are, much less be fully authentically who I am, and then find spaces where I'm around people that aren't like me, don't look like me, don't think like me, all the things, we don't have those spaces and opportunities. And so I think it is, look, the answer to all of it is this. The answer to all of it is
The
creating
conversation.
spaces, coming together, having conversations, getting to know people, getting outside of my bubble, and then it's educating yourself. And I think that is one of the biggest things about what we're facing right now is, again, because it's all moving too fast, people don't have time to understand what's really happening around them.
I I look at how we don't know how our history.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know much of anything. I grew up, obviously I'm black. I grew up black, and I grew up, learning about black folk, and but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't grow up learning about gay people,
Mm.
and or I didn't know that they were even gay until later on when I became an adult,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um and I know that that resonates with so many other people, and the only reason I learned history was because I was around people who knew more than me,
Mm.
and I wanted to know what they knew,
Mm.
so that because I knew that knowledge was the only way I could protect myself. Being black, growing up on Bluff Road in Starlight,
Mm.
to being able to be on TV on a weekly basis.
Mm.
You don't just kind of skip into that lane. And I feel very much charged with having to spread the knowledge that needs to be spread,
Mm.
and
Mm.
I feel like that is definitely my MO.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I needed you to sit on this couch, because I was like, I know that there's one person who is not afraid. I know I have a lot of friends in politics. I have a lot of friends in politics that are closeted,
Mm.
and I couldn't get anybody on this couch that was in politics.
Mm.
As many people that I have in my phone, and I can, and
Uh-huh.
I could not
Yeah.
find one person,
Mm.
and it made me so angry. Um, it didn't hurt my feelings because I didn't take it personally, and I knew that a lot of my friends were in races, running races, doing active,
Mm-hmm.
and I understood why, but I also felt like, well, you must only support certain parts of
Mm.
me,
Mm. Baby.
or you support,
Uh-huh.
that it's isolated. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
I support who you are in the light, in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I say all that to say that that is just a small example of what's going on, and I think in addition to what you've said, because I do agree wholeheartedly, if our leaders don't show us that they can stand hand in hand
Mm.
with someone like me, with someone like you, with someone like him and her, then what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look like, DEI. It doesn't look like they really care,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you can't have the conversation without talking about power. And I don't mean that as like a cliche buzzword. I don't mean that as like but it's true that for all intents and purposes, you can replace the term politics with power. If we're talking about politics, we're talking about power. In this moment that we're facing right now in our state, where our elected officials are at the state house right now,
Right now.
discussing redistricting a map in the 11th hour, which by the way, some of those elected officials had a backbone enough to stand up and say, we don't want to do this. But one person who is a lame duck governor on his way out, attempting so hard to make sure that his lame duck lieutenant governor becomes the next governor so that we can continue the oppression. Like, we're doing this in the 11th hour, and I say it over and over, the maps have nothing to do with the lines that are drawn on the paper. They
Mm.
have everything to do with who holds the power and who gets the say. And so you can have senators who are supposed to be the highly elected officials of the state who stand up and say, we don't want this. And the governor can turn around and say, oh, but you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I use that example to say in so many of these moments where it's like we watch politicians uh, really use our community, and they'll vote one way and then not vote another way in favor of our community, or
Mm-hmm.
they'll trade that recently trading this bill, this anti-trans bathroom bill. Here
Yeah.
we are having this damn
Conversation
conversation again.
again.
And we watch senators who trade our community, our lives, for the sake of another bill that they've got to get through. And so, again, it's not just the game, it's the power to say, with one vote, I can determine what matters or what happens or how I dictate you get to live your life. And so that's why this is important. That's why we have to do this. And I say all that to also say money. We are in this broken capitalistic system, and money doesn't flow into South Carolina the same way that it flows into other states.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what happens when that is the case? You lose sight of the most expansive, most marginalized people. Because if I got to get into that DEI mess, and if I got to get really deep into the nuances of what it means to be fully liberating through policy, well, that doesn't fit into that funder out of
Yeah.
such and such who's got to bring $100,000 down to the state. So we'll leave that behind so we can get this going. Like, this is all about power and control and money. And so it's why it is not a cliche to say that the people hold the power, but if we're not showing up and being present and being active, it doesn't make a difference. And it's exhausting. We're tired. I'm tired. But we've got to keep showing up.
We've got to keep showing up, and I feel like we can all be tired together,
Yeah.
you know. But if we don't start somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be hanging out right here,
Mm-hmm.
in limbo. And I recently moved to Charlotte, which has been so great. But
I was
it
sad, but I'm glad it's great.
I shed a tear. But it's been, but I've seen a different type of inclusion.
Hmm.
I grew up in this city. I grew up in Columbia. I know this city like the back of my hand,
Hmm.
and one of the ways that I've been able to maneuver through here is by Shonda Davis, shout to Shonda. Shonda calls me a chameleon.
Mm.
Is by being able to, make myself inclusive with the straights, with the, in a room. Well, I went to AC Flora. I grew up around a lot of white kids, so it's not hard for me to hang around a little bit of everybody and make myself a part of whatever is going on. But being in a place where I don't have to take performative measures and just be myself, and there's a whole myriad of people who who want the same thing. I think about how much I wanted that in Colombia, you know, and I love being you love being the pioneer, but it's so hard because I never knew anybody like before you came. I didn't know anybody even adjacent to politics who was queer and if I did, they weren't out. And so your voice is for me, it's so powerful no matter what space you're in, whether you're in your 501c3 space. Tell us more about that.
Oh,
You
you're
have
just gonna drop that. Very quick shameless plug. It's called the Agape Table. We are healing, educating, and activating to create a South Carolina where every LGBTQ plus person belongs. And we do that through everything that we just talked about. We do it through story circles and story slams. We do it through dialogue dinners. We use education as a way to stir up the dialogue. So we do an education cohort. We use art as a medium. So we partner with artists to use that to stir up the conversation. But ultimately, it's all about everything we just talked about. How can you walk away from that experience and know more about queer history, know more about yourself, and know more about your community, and then go do something with it?
Yeah.
And so that's what we do.
And
that is so much more joyful than sitting in that damn state house and listening to them go back and forth. And so I'm so grateful, like I said, that I don't just do one thing. I get to really dabble in multiple spaces, and that's exciting. But I do, the last thing I want to offer up, outside of join the Agape Table and get involved, is get involved in your local community.
Yeah.
And again, so many of these things have been co-opted and they turn into buzzwords or cliches, but it's real. Like, people look at states like Georgia and they're like, we're going to do that too. We're going to flip the Senate seats. Or they look at North Carolina, particularly what's happening with LGBTQ plus community in North Carolina, where there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of base building. There's a lot of coalition building. You're seeing statewide proclamations and things getting passed. And I say it jokingly, but not so jokingly, when people in South Carolina are like, look at them, we want that. And I'm like, you know how? They talk to each other.
They have conversations.
They're friends.
Yeah.
And in South Carolina, we are small enough, and it gets to a point where there's real harm caused by people in the process of organizing and doing this work and trying to we lose sight of each other, and harm happens, and then we don't repair it, or we don't talk about it, or we don't come back to it. And so the biggest problem that we face in this state is a disjointed movement, because people are not getting along. And so what we have to start doing is saying, okay, the national orgs and the orgs who lead this stuff, they're important and they're needed, and we need to follow in the moments when the action alerts come out and the rallies and the pressers and all these things. But when they go away, who are you going home with? Who are you going to the coffee shop and the bar and your house and your porch and your kitchen with? Who are you building with? Because movements that led us through past Stonewall into Christopher Street, movements that led us at the March on Washington, movements that led us to all these places, they started in small rooms. They started in churches and living rooms and house meetings. And so lest we forget, we are not building community and we're not organizing if we're not doing it in our literal backyard. And so if you want to see this state not look like what it looks like, you have got to start doing it in your bubble. That's where it starts.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The crowd is going
crazy. And also thank you to all the folks that didn't answer your text message to be here, because I feel like I am one voice of so many. So I'm grateful that I got to be here.
I appreciate you more than you know, and I look forward to speaking with you more.
Absolutely.
Thanks you guys for seeing us, checking us out on the Black Queer Culture Show's Queer Space. I'm James Patrick, and I look forward to chatting it up with you guys soon.